Graduation day was supposed to feel like a finish line. Instead, it felt like I was standing alone at the edge of something vast, unsure if anyone would notice whether I crossed it or not. I woke up early that morning, long before my alarm, staring at the ceiling while memories played against it, late nights studying, part-time jobs, meals eaten cold because no one was home, encouragement I learned to give myself because no one else did. I had told myself that today would make all of it worth it. Today, they would see me. I checked my phone before I even got out of bed. Nothing. By mid-morning, I finally received a message. One line. Casual. Almost cheerful. We won't make it. Your sister really needs this trip. We'll celebrate when we're back. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just another reminder that my milestones were always flexible, always optional. I stared at the message until the words blurred, then forced myself to get dressed. I pinned my graduation cap in place with shaking hands, telling my reflection not to cry. Crying would mean I cared too much. At the ceremony, the seats filled quickly. Families laughed, took photos, waved banners. I scanned the crowd out of habit, even though I already knew. 2 seats near the front had my parents' names printed neatly on white cards. They looked too clean. Too hopeful. Empty. I imagined them at the resort, sunlight on water, my sister laughing, my parents relaxed and smiling like they hadn't missed anything important. Like I wasn't standing here alone, trying to become something without witnesses. The ache in my chest grew heavy, pressing down until breathing felt like work. I told myself not to be dramatic. This was normal. This was my role. Be understanding. Be patient. Be proud quietly. But when the announcer asked graduates to look at their families, something inside me cracked. I stepped away from the crowd and made a call I never thought I'd need to make. Hi, I said, my voice barely holding together. This is awkward, but, would you come to my graduation? My best friend's mother didn't ask why. She didn't hesitate. She didn't tell me it was last minute. Of course, she said simply. We're on our way. I hung up and cried for exactly 30 seconds, just enough to let it out, not enough to fall apart. Then I wiped my face, straightened my shoulders, and went back to my seat. I realized something then, sitting between strangers with empty chairs beside me. Family wasn't who promised. It was who showed up. And for the first time in my life, instead of waiting to be chosen, I chose myself. I saw them before they saw me. They were standing near the entrance, scanning the crowd like they were afraid they might miss something important. My best friend's father had smoothed his tie 3 times already, and her mother held a small bouquet of flowers like it was made of glass. They didn't look out of place, but they didn't look casual either. They looked like people who understood the weight of the moment. When her mother's eyes found mine, her face lit up. There you are, she said, and suddenly I wasn't invisible anymore. She hugged me tightly, the kind of hug that doesn't rush, the kind that says you're safe here. I hadn't realized how much I needed that until my knees almost gave out. Her father shook my hand, his voice thick when he said, "We're so proud of you." Truly. No one had said it like that before, like they meant every word. We walked together to the seating area. They took the 2 empty seats without hesitation, as if their names had always belonged there. Her mother placed the flowers in my lap and adjusted my graduation gown, fussing over me the way I imagined parents did when they weren't distracted by someone else's life. I kept waiting for the sadness to rush back in. Instead, something else filled the space, something warm, steady, unfamiliar. Presence. When the ceremony began, I stopped looking at other families. I focused on the way her parents leaned forward when names were called, how they clapped for students they'd never met, how they whispered encouragement under their breath like the words might reach the stage. When my name was announced, my heart jumped. I stood, legs shaking, and walked across the stage. The lights were bright, the applause loud, but all I could see were them. They were on their feet, clapping harder than anyone else, smiling like this moment belonged to them too. And maybe it did. I felt something break open in my chest, not pain this time, but relief. The kind that comes when you realize you're not as alone as you thought. After the ceremony, people gathered in clusters, taking photos, laughing, planning celebrations. Her parents insisted on pictures, standing beside me with their arms around my shoulders. I smiled without forcing it. That's when I noticed the cameras. A small film crew moved quietly among the families, capturing moments, tears, laughter, embraces. One of them paused near us, watching her mother brush lint from my sleeve and whisper, "You did so well." Later, a woman from the crew approached us and asked a few gentle questions. How long had they known me? Why did they come? Her father answered without thinking. Because someone should be here for her. It was such a simple sentence. But it changed everything. That day, I learned that love doesn't need blood to feel real. Sometimes, it just needs intention. And in a crowd full of people, the ones who show up, really show up, become your family without ever asking permission. I thought the day was over. After the ceremony, after the hugs and photos and quiet gratitude settling into my bones, I believed this was as full as the moment would get. I was wrong. Life wasn't done with me yet. One of the producers from the film crew approached us as we were about to leave. She smiled warmly and asked if we could stay a little longer. There was something careful in her voice, like she didn't want to startle us. "We're filming a segment tonight," she explained. "It's about people who show up when it matters most." I didn't think much of it. I assumed they wanted a few closing shots, maybe a short interview. My best friend's parents exchanged a look, uncertain, but kind, and agreed. The studio wasn't large, just a modest stage with soft lights and a small audience. I sat in the front row while they were guided behind the scenes. My hands rested in my lap, fingers twisted together, my mind still replaying the morning's disappointment and the afternoon's unexpected healing. When the host stepped out, smiling and composed, I felt a flicker of nerves. He spoke about family, not the kind defined by last names, but the kind defined by action. He talked about graduations, about empty seats, about how sometimes the people who are meant to be there aren't the ones who raised you. Then he invited my best friend's parents onto the stage. I froze. They looked just as confused as I felt, blinking under the lights, holding hands the way people do when they don't know what's coming but face it together anyway. The host told my story without using my name. A young woman. Years of effort. A milestone overlooked. Two people who stepped in without obligation. My throat tightened. "For that," he said, "our company wants to say thank you." The screen behind them lit up. $500,000. The room went silent. Her mother covered her mouth. Her father stared at the screen like it might disappear if he blinked. I felt tears spill over before I realized I was crying. Not because of the money, but because kindness had been seen. A quiet, ordinary kindness had been honored in front of the world. The applause thundered around us. That's when my phone started vibrating. Once. Twice. Again. I didn't look at it at first. I couldn't. But when the buzzing didn't stop, I glanced down. Missed call. Mom. Dad. Mom again. By the end of the segment, my phone felt heavy with notifications. Messages piled up. Calls stacked one after another. 78 missed calls. They had seen it. Somewhere, on a couch or by a pool or in a hotel room, they had finally watched me matter. Too late. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anger either. What I felt was distance, a calm, steady space forming between who I used to be and who I was becoming. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to choose me. And that was the moment everything truly changed. I didn't answer the calls. Not that night. Not the next morning either. For once, I let silence do the talking. It felt strange at first, like breaking a rule I'd lived by my whole life. I was always the one who smoothed things over, who understood, who forgave before anyone asked. But understanding had cost me too much. Silence, I learned, could be a form of protection. When I finally listened to the voicemails, my mother was crying in the first one. In the second, she was apologizing. By the fifth, she was explaining. My father's messages were quieter, filled with phrases like "we didn't realize" and "we never meant." My sister didn't leave any messages at all. That hurt more than I expected. A few days later, I agreed to meet them. Neutral ground. A small cafe where emotions couldn't grow too loud. They looked different when I walked in, smaller somehow, like people who had been forced to see themselves clearly for the first time. My mother reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean in either. "I'm proud of you," she said. Her voice shook. "We just didn't think." "I know," I interrupted gently. "That's the problem. You didn't think." The words weren't sharp. They didn't need to be. I told them how it felt to watch my milestones become optional. How I learned to celebrate myself in quiet rooms. How their absence shaped me, not in bitterness, but in strength. I didn't accuse. I explained. And somehow, that was harder for them to hear. "I don't need grand gestures now," I said. "I needed you then." They nodded. They cried. They apologized again. I accepted the apology, but not the old pattern. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean returning to the same place and hoping for different results. It meant choosing what I would allow moving forward. And that was my revenge. Not the money. Not the attention. Not the missed calls. My revenge was becoming someone who no longer begged to be chosen. I stayed close to the people who showed up. My best friend's parents didn't replace my own, but they expanded my world. They reminded me that love isn't scarce. It's just selective. On quiet nights, when doubt tried to creep back in, I remembered the applause. Not for me, but for kindness. For presence. For choosing someone when it wasn't required. That was the lesson I carried forward. Success didn't heal me. Recognition didn't either. What healed me was learning my worth without needing permission. And when my phone buzzed now, I answered only when I wanted to, when it felt right. Because the girl who once stared at empty seats had grown into a woman who knew exactly where she belonged. Not waiting. Not chasing. But standing, whole, seen, and finally at peace.